Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people who are making Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Listen, it's been a great week on the show. Had Austin Golding from Golding Barge Lines come in and talk about energy policy. I had a great conversation with my friend Ashley Edwards and Jim Asher, Pulitzer Prize winner, who used to lead the Washington Bureau for McClatchy, and he's a good friend. And we talked about the state of media in America today. Very interesting conversation. If you missed it, I really encourage you to go tune into that. And had a lot of interesting folks. And I want to say I really appreciate you staying tuned with me and all the positive feedback. It's really great to be here and be able to talk about the situation in Mississippi and to celebrate most of the time about what's happening here. But this is Friday, and I want to tell you, Jeff Duncan has been on vacation the last couple of weeks, and he's back now with the Saints camp going on in California. So it's good to have him back. It's been strange not having you the past couple of Fridays, but I hope you enjoyed your vacation, Jeff.
Man, did I ever, Ricky. It's good to be back, but it was hard to leave France. I mean, it was my first real vacation since I started the Gleason book project 2.5 years ago. So it was, it was nice to get away and kind of enjoy some good food and, get to see the Tour de France. We saw the final stage of that. We saw the U.S. women's Olympic soccer team play their first match at Stade de Nice. So it was kind of an epic trip to get to see some sports at the same time of just enjoying getting away.
Yes. If you know James O'Byrne, you didn't get a chance to see him.
No, he was up in
so
Paris.
Close, but yet so far away.
People don't realize, like, it's funny, it's so far away, France. Everybody's like, oh, you're in France. So is James. France is as big as Texas. It's a big place. So just because you're in France doesn't mean you're near somebody. So I remember years ago being over there when something happened down on the French Mediterranean coast, and I was in Paris, and everybody was asking me if I was okay. And I was like, well, that's hundreds of miles away, but I get it.
Listen, I'm glad. First of all, I'm glad you had a good vacation. You needed it, and you deserved it. For people who may not realize this, for people who watched Saints coverage by the various media in New Orleans over the past 30 plus years, they know Ed Daniels from WGNO. And as we were discussing before we started the show, I think when I think of Ed Daniels, I think about Buddy D and Jim Henderson and all those stalwarts. But he had a heart attack while he was in California covering the Saints. And he's in ICU as we speak. And I saw where you attended a rosary last night to pray for him. But I was just hated to see that, my friend.
Yeah, it's a really sad situation, Ricky. Ed, the dean of really the local broadcast journalism industry here, and he's been a sports director at WGNO since 1992. He knows everyone in town. Everyone knows him. And he's just an incredibly respected and well-liked person in our business. And so it's very difficult to hear what happened to him out there. He's had a history of heart issues, and we're all praying and pulling for him. He's, still in ICU out in Los Angeles, and the family, his lovely wife, Robin, is out there with him along with other family members, and they're trying to get him back to New Orleans. And I think after he gets evaluated with some further tests, we'll know more, but certainly, difficult situation to deal with out there.
You always hate to see it. And, I know you guys compete with each other, but gosh, you spend so much time together. And in media rooms, on the sidelines, you get to know each other. It's really a brotherhood, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny because Ed, we always kidded Ed. We've always kidded him about how hard he works. I mean, there's no one that works harder than Ed Daniels, and he's mentored a lot of very successful people that have gone on to big things in their careers. I mean, I can think right off the top of my head, Christina Pink, who's now a network NFL reporter, worked at WGNO under Ed. She's just one of many. But Ed is seemingly everywhere all the time. He just seems like he never takes a day off. And lately, one thing I've noticed with him is he's starting to travel more, starting to do more away from work, and I think that's been a very refreshing change for him. He was spending all the time last press conference we were together, him talking about going to Europe with his wife, with Robin, and getting to see the Vatican and all the different things in Rome. So we're all pulling for him to come through this. And last night, the Rosary was a packed house at the church. There was 400 or 500 people there, and it just shows you the impact he's had here in New Orleans on the people in the community.
Well, thanks for giving us that feedback, and we'll pray for him and his family. Listen, the Saints are in training camp, and I've watched it closely. The coverage from your team at NOLA.com and the Times Picayune has been really, really good. The way I would describe it is, you think about the system that was in place before. The core of the team had been in that system for a very long time, so new people had to come in and learn the system and whatever. When you've got a new system going into place, and this is specifically on the offensive side of the ball, everybody's kind of starting with a blank slate. Everybody's having to come up to speed together. And so that changes things in a dramatic way. And it's been very interesting watching it. It really makes it competitive in just about every position. I know that there are some lock-in scenarios and so on, but it really provides an opportunity for players to emerge and separate themselves. But it has been an interesting training camp from that perspective, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think with the whole new offensive coaching staff, like you said, everyone has a fresh start. It's a fresh set of eyes on players, a fresh way of doing things, a different way of doing things. So players like Trevor Penning, for instance, have a clean start, whereas, in the past, he struggled to get on the field last year after losing his starting job. So I do think it's in some ways invigorating. I know Taysom Hill has already said that. It's always good to challenge yourself with new ideas and a new way of doing things. But with that, and I think we're seeing that right now, there's going to be growing pains. I was doing some research recently about, past offensive installations, going all the way back to when I covered the team as a beat writer with Jim Haslett, and Mike McCarthy was offensive coordinator, and they struggled early though that year, his first year there. It took about half a season, Ricky, for the offense to really kind of kick in. And the same thing happened with Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael in 2006. I mean, everyone remembers that year as the team going to the NFC Championship game, but offensively they really didn't get going until about 3/4 of the way through the season. I mean, Drew Brees was throwing for less than 200 yards most games. So I think we can expect that with this new system as they work out the kinks and see what works, what doesn't. And I think we're seeing that right now in camp, going against a veteran defense that's been in the same system for, almost a decade now.
Well, when you see going against a veteran defense and you've got Peyton Turner, who's coming back and playing well, and you've got Chase Young, who, man, they masterfully worked him through his rehab, and he's ahead of schedule. And I know you've been around it, but the bottom line is, man, everyone who says they stood next to him and looked at him, he's just a beast of a dude, and he's playing really good ball right now. And it's that defense is going to be tough this year if we can stay healthy.
Well, I think, Chase Young, it's a big year for him, right? I mean, he was the number one pick in the entire draft, and his career hasn't panned out the way he expected, or anyone really expected. He's got enormous potential, and he knows this is a kind of a make or break year for him. So I think it was a very smart signing by the Saints to sign him to basically an incentive-laden deal, kind of a one-year prove-it deal. There's a lot on the line for Chase Young, and the Saints really can reap the benefits if he really, strives to reach that potential. It's hard to gauge sometimes because you're going against the Saints offensive line, which has struggled. So it's hard to know, how dominant he is or how bad the offensive line going against him is. And that's always the conundrum when you're at camp, when you're going against each other. That's why I say when they go against the Niners, in a week, and I'll be there for that, we'll get a really good gauge of where they're at, where they stand.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Again, if they can stay healthy, they're already not healthy. I know. Well, I'm thinking specifically about the defensive line, but if you got defensive line can stay healthy, they can. Man, we could have a real significant pass rush this year.
Yeah, I think the potential's there. I mean, they've got a lot of high draft picks. a lot of guys that were drafted high for a reason. Isaiah Foskey and Peyton Turner you mentioned. Obviously, Cam Jordan's the dean over there, and Chase Young was the number one pick in the draft. Granderson, another option there, probably their best overall player. And Brian Brzee, who's injured right now, was another first-round draft pick along the interior. So there's a lot of reason to be excited, but again, I'm always, me, I'm always going to be hesitant. I need to see it first of all for myself.
Yeah.
And I haven't been out there, so I need to see that myself, and then I need to see who they're going. I think it's always important to know who they're going against. And so when you see a one-on-one, just factor that part of it in.
So we'll start to break it all down, talk about some of the injuries that are emerging from training camp. Granderson, you mentioned Granderson, one of the more solid players, but usually he's an afterthought, which is very interesting to me. But when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune, and my friend and your friend and someone we enjoy chatting with on Fridays. Jeff mentioned Carl Granderson, but he tends to be an afterthought because he's just kind of doing his thing, but he is one of the more solid players on the team, isn't he?
Yeah, and he signed, a big deal last year. He was an undrafted free agent out of Wyoming who probably would have been a mid-round draft pick if he didn't have some issues off the field. And drifted down out of the drafted ranks. But he's got a lot of ability. He's worked hard, Ricky, to build up his body. He came in, he used to weigh about 260, and they got him up to about 285. And that's what you have to be in this Saints defense. You've got to be stout on the edge. That's one of the problems Isaiah Foskey has right now. He's not there. He's where Carl Granderson was 3 years ago. And he'll eventually get there, I think. But there's just so much potential there, and they've got to play good up front. They're playing a lot better teams this year offensively, a lot better quarterbacks. We know the strength of the team is the back end. I think they're going to cover well again this year, but you can only cover so long. So they've got to get better pass rush. And you can tell that's a priority for them because they went out and signed Chase Young. He was their top free agent in the offseason. They know that. So I think that's the key to this defense this year. Can they pressure better up front?
Yeah, I mean, again, we can take this in 100 different directions, but with Lattimore's injury, Kool-Aid just fit right in. He's going to be a star, isn't he?
Well, I mean, I'll wait and see on that, but I think he's definitely a player that's got the ability to be a starting, corner in the league and a top corner. Dennis Allen, that's his strength, is coaching defensive backs. That's what he played at Texas A&M. That's what he's always coached. And you just look at the track record. Almost every corner that comes in here, whether it's a Paulson Adebo or Alante Taylor, they all tend to outplay their draft grade. And you're getting a Kool-Aid McKinstry, guy that was a first-round draft pick that they got in the second round with a first-round grade. I definitely think that's the strength of the team, the cornerback position, and that's why you draft a Kool-Aid McKinstry, because of what we've already seen with Lattimore going down. You can't have too many good ones.
Hey, so we'll come back to the offense here in just a minute, and I like what I'm hearing about Taysom Hill and the opportunities for him, et cetera. But let's cover real quick some of the injuries that are emerging, and maybe the ones that you may be more concerned about.
Well, obviously, Marshawn Lattimore is the first one that pops out because he's been hurt the last 2 years. I think any of these soft tissue injuries are always concerning. I mean, we've got Brian Brzee, we've got Demario Davis with hamstring injuries. Those things are delicate injuries. They're very finicky. They have different timelines. We've seen players miss, 2 months with hamstring injuries. So you just got to see how they recover from them. I think Dennis Allen has a good beat on it, though. I heard his comments the other day. They're not going to rush guys like that back. Those are veteran players. It's really, if you're going to have injuries to players, it's good that it's veteran players because those guys don't need the reps. Demario Davis doesn't need another rep. He's ready to play week one. What would be concerning is if there were a setback to a young player that needs to get on the field. We saw Allen the other day say Kool-Aid McKinstry missed the whole offseason, so he's way behind. Now, fortunately, cornerback, Ricky, is a position that doesn't require a lot. I mean, it's one of the few positions where you can just throw guys out there, guard that guy for the most part. It's very simple. So I do think the hamstring injuries are the ones that concern me.
Any other injuries that are notable?
Well, I mean, the running back position, Kendre Miller, this is a guy that they were counting on to eventually step up and be the number 2 running back. There's just not a lot of depth behind Alvin Kamara right now. I mean, Jamal Williams is on the downside of his career. He's not a guy anymore that can kind of get yards after contact or really get more than what's blocked at this stage of his career. Kendre Miller was supposed to beat him out this year and be the backup, and now he's hurt again after being hurt last year. And we heard Dennis Allen kind of call him out. And I think that's a good sign for Dennis Allen. He's done that now a couple of times. He did it with A.T. Perry, saying that, he's kind of lighting a charge under him. Some of these young players they're counting on to step up from last year's draft class are already kind of idling.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of A.T. Perry, we'll just go there. Why you mentioned it? You guys had a headline: "Fine isn't fine enough." The reality about him is there's some really good guys coming along in that area, and if you look at wide receiver depth, that is not set in stone, is it?
No, I mean, I think they're waiting for somebody to jump up and win the number 3 job behind Shaheed and Olave, and I think it's wide open. And look, my guy, I'm so happy to see my guy Mason Tipton come on, the rookie out of Yale, because he was a guy I told all of our colleagues that in the offseason he was catching my eye every day. I said, we better watch this guy. He reminds me a lot of Lance Moore. He's not quite as big as Lance Moore, but he's a little faster than Lance Moore. But very similar kind of skill set, also from Ohio, ironically. But a very smart player, obviously, went to Yale. But undrafted, he could be one of these gems like Rashid Shaheed that they find from the undrafted ranks that steps into an opportunity. And he seems to be seizing that every day, makes a play every day. And when Dennis Allen talks about him unsolicited, you know he's opening eyes.
He also put him in front of the press, which is kind of rare for a player. Right. Especially an undrafted player like him.
That's a clear sign, because that doesn't happen by accident.
No, it doesn't. And you think about how he talked about it. I mean, gosh, first of all, he went to Yale, and he was very focused on getting his degree. He had opportunities to leave in the portal, and he said he's not going to do it because he enjoyed the teamness of the game, and he wanted to stay with his team in Yale and seek that 3rd championship. And, man, you just had to be impressed with him. Not only the way he's going to be a leader, clearly, but everything that I've read about him, he's fast as a cat. I mean, he is a quick dude. And and as he points out, he's not just a deep threat. He can run all the routes. Someone like A.T. Perry has to watch out.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about competition at this level. And A.T. Perry is totally different kind of receiver. But it's year 2 for him, and NFL coaches expect you to step up and make a leap in that year. It's kind of make or break unless you have some other circumstances. So he needs to step forward, and I think there's a few other guys in that boat as well at the receiver position. And we're going to get a real good beat on the receivers. Like I said, once they play a preseason game against Arizona, then they go to, we have San Francisco come into Irvine, and you're going against really the best team in the NFC. And you really get a good gauge. I know last year at camp, once they went against the Chargers, you could see where the weaknesses were, where their strengths were. I mean, it was very clear because they weren't going against each other anymore. And I remember distinctly watching Trevor Penning struggle against Khalil Mack and Bosa. And I said, they got a problem there. Hopefully, they better hope he can develop.
Hey, listen, I mentioned Taysom Hill, but all reports about him is he came in incredible shape. He's strong as hell. Did I see I'm trying to remember, did he squat over 600 pounds just the last couple of days?
Well, yeah, he's always done that. I remember when he came in out of BYU, he was legendary as a workout warrior. I mean, he's always been that guy. I mean, he's had those freakish kind of measurables. That's the difference between him. And Sean Payton used to point this out all the time. Everybody used to compare him to Tim Tebow, won the Heisman at Florida, and obviously he's a tremendous athlete himself. But Tim Tebow could not run like a 4.4 40 the way Taysom Hill did. This is a speed league, Ricky. You got to be able to run. And Tim Tebow ran like a 4.6 4.7. He wasn't even in the same league as Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill's lower body strength, his ability to squat, like you said, is just extraordinary. So between his physical abilities, built like a linebacker, and then his speed, just a very unique specimen. That's why Sean Payton identified him the way he did. he recognized this guy's a special talent. It's amazing he didn't get drafted.
But when he went in last year, it was almost predictable what was going to happen. And this year, it looks like that they have a very specific role for him, and that is one that's not predictable. Isn't that what you see?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I've heard that a lot. I think we're all whitewashing everything too easily right now. I think we're doing too much of this like everything was predictable. I'll wait and see on how successful this is going to work.
That's why you're a columnist. That's why you're not a sports writer just covering what happened at camp. You're paid to have an opinion about things, and you go back in your history, and you have been right a lot about this. And so you're not going to be the guy that's going to have the glow stars around you about how great the season is going to be.
The things I'm hearing, Ricky, we're going to run this play to make it look like this play, and then we're going to do a pass of it. Saints have been doing that for 2 decades. There's nothing you do. Play action's nothing unusual. Getting your playmakers in space, that's nothing unusual. There's nothing unusual, but there's no magic secret sauce here. The player's gonna have to make plays, and Taysom Hill can make plays, and he's made plays. He's been the key facet in their offense over the years. I'm interested to see maybe how they use him a little differently, because I do think he's going to have a huge role in this offense.
Well, I can't wait to talk to you after you've had the opportunity to watch him in some trenches with another team with San Francisco. So that'll be very interesting. But look forward to chatting with you next week, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, I'll be out west, so we'll talk from the West Coast.
Absolutely. This has been Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. When we come back, we'll have JT Mitchell from SuperTalk Mississippi News. We'll see you after this.